We got updates on some criminal charges against two different suspects from across the states that have been involved in allegedly shooting people. You've got, of course, the case that happened last Monday where you had a Illinois State Police trooper in the early morning hours it was late on Sunday into Monday when the Illinois State Police trooper Dakota Chapman Green was shot by a suspect, allegedly by Cristobal Santana. We've got an update in that case, but we've also got an update in the case out of Chicago where you had a criminal suspect charged with dozens of charges after being involved allegedly in a mass shooting where they were at a party for Halloween on early Sunday morning, and they were told to leave the party, but they came back with a firearm, allegedly shooting and injuring 15 people. 2 were in critical condition until yesterday. Their status was upgraded. You've got some comments now from Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Schnelling, and also from the Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox holding a news conference yesterday about the latest in that case. It was a kind of an impromptu news conference. It was not on Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's public schedule, and something that they, I guess, decided to put together last minute. They threw out there a lot of information, and in particular, Snelling talks about the status of this suspect. Were they able to even legally have a firearm? 48-year-old William Groves, he says. Let me turn this up.
48-year-old William Groves has been charged with 15 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 15 felony counts of aggravated battery with discharge of a firearm, 1 felony count of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, 1 felony count of aggravated discharge of a firearm in an occupied building. Groves was identified as the individual who was removed from the party that night and came back to the gathering and began shooting into the crowd shortly after 1 a.m. Sunday morning. He's a convicted felon who shouldn't have had a gun. Again, he's a convicted felon who should not have had a gun. A summary closure has also been ordered for the business where this unsanctioned gathering occurred.
So the suspect, a convicted felon who should not have had a gun, repeated by the Chicago Police Superintendent. I think it's important that that's clear and out in the open, because you'll hear all the time about the pushback against gun laws for law-abiding firearms owners that they want to comply with, to be in compliance with the law. They're not the ones that are going out there and committing these types of acts. Mass shooting, 15 people shot, and the suspect arrested shortly thereafter, found with a .38, and even some other details shared up in the Chicago press. It was had an altered serial number, so obviously that was an illegal possession of a firearm by a felon. So here we are with the question of where the target should be on laws, maybe stiffer penalties against individuals who are charged with these things, or whatever the case may be. So interesting note there, definitely important to add to the stack of information on this particular case. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson was at this news conference yesterday. He didn't take any questions in particular, and that's a totally different topic altogether. Chicago Mayor has not really been regularly in front of media with questions. I get his daily public schedule, and a lot of times it's the mayor making a statement in front of a school, and it says B-roll only, and what that means is there's no Q&A opportunity. So no questions asked of Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson yesterday, but he did make this statement
that we're going to hold individuals accountable who create havoc and harm in our communities. And that accountability is on display right now. We're also very much moved and deeply touched by those who are oftentimes impacted by violence and trauma, but in too many instances ignored. We won't do that. To all of the victims and survivors of violence in this city, the full force of government is available to provide the type of support that's needed for these families. In fact, I've made a line item budget to address this very dynamic.
So, question again of how they approach these types of crimes, and not just going after the criminals and holding them accountable, Johnson says, but also taking care of the victims, which on Sunday, there was a spread in the Chicago Tribune about how last year's Halloween mass shooting, a lot of the victims feel like the government has just left them behind. So some substantial questions on how to treat victims of these crimes. But even the perpetrators, there's a lot of questions about State's Attorney Kim Foxx's office and how she's treated criminals and whether she charges criminals properly. You've got the Safety Act as well that's at play here. And Kim Foxx at yesterday's news conference also sharing detail about how her office did indeed move to keep this individual behind bars pre-trial.
At noon today, Mr. Groves will appear at first appearance court. The State's Attorney's Office has filed a petition to have him detained pre-trial, such that he is a threat to those in the community and needs to be detained pre-trial.
So those are some of the latest particulars about the mass shooting that happened up in Chicago, with the ongoing investigation and the charges that have been filed against this suspect, a felon who should not have had a gun. And we'll obviously hear a lot more about all of that, no question. It is Bishop on Air. Thanks for hanging out. We'll get to another case in just moments on the next segment. All right, so stay tuned.